Alright, cool. So now we're going to go over the Kettlebell Clean. The Kettlebell Clean is probably the #1 transitional movement. So what I mean by that is that you almost always have to get into a clean before you go into a press. Even coming down from some snatches, people go into the clean and rack position. So the clean is something that's essential to your arsenal with kettlebells. But very commonly, people end up, cleaning incorrectly, getting a lot of bruises on the back of their hand, messing up their shoulder. So I'm going to show the proper clean and then go over some common mistakes and how you can correct those, okay? So right now I'm using 16 kg. With the clean you can go heavier, but again, like with most kettlebells, you want to go heavy. It doesn't make sense for me to practice with something like a 4 kg or I don't even know, I think they make 2 kgs or some nonsense like that. That makes no sense because if I'm doing it incorrectly, I would get no feedback and I would get no kind of, I would just think, oh, okay, I'm doing it right. But then I go and I do something that's a little heavier when I feel like I can progress and then I start hurting myself. So from the beginning, just use a nice heavy kettlebell, learn how to do it properly so then you can progress yourself properly. Alright, so the proper clean is almost the same setup as a swing. So if you haven't seen the kettlebell swing video, go check it out, the link is below. So the kettlebell swing, I'll start from the side. I start in this triangle formation. The same is true for the clean and for most ballistic movements, okay? So the kettlebell is going to start away from me, and I'm going to have this triangle formation. My toes are pointing forward, or slightly turned out, shoulder width distance, okay? So before I ever teach the clean, I like to teach people a one-arm swing, because you have to kind of know the difference. So a regular two-hand swing, right, you're here. A one-arm swing, same thing, same formation. Grab the kettlebell, hinge back, hike back, and project forward. So if you notice, at my shoulders, I'm trying to get little to no rotation. So I don't want this going on. Nothing like that, because then it puts my spine in a twisted position, and now I'm doing some extensions and flexions on that twisted spine. If you're really super athletic and you've been using kettlebells for a while, you can go into a little bit more twisting action. But in the beginning, you want to keep that spine neutral and stabilized, so both shoulders are pointing forward, even though this kettlebell is trying to make you rotate at the waist, okay? So once you get that, once you understand to not rotate and how to do a one-arm swing, then you can learn the clean. So on the swing, check out my humerus, or my upper arm, and how it disconnects from my body when it projects forward. So hinging back, hike back, project. So it's disconnecting from my body, okay? So the easiest way I've learned to teach how to do the clean is to first teach the upper body sticking to the body, all right? I mean upper arm sticking to the body. So instead of me letting it project forward, I'm gonna keep that connection and then bring in the bell to me. So this is how it looks. Okay, so if you see the upper arm connects, and then I just kind of ring in the kettlebell, right, or what we refer to in hardstyle as taming the arc. Okay, so if the kettlebell is popping out here, I'm going to tame the arc and bring that weight to me. So from the front, this is how a clean looks. Okay, at the top of the clean, you're in the rack position. The rack position is your safety position, okay? So right now, I have 35 pounds weighing down on me, so pretty significant, not too super heavy, but in this position, I want to make sure of a couple things in the rack position. First, I want to make sure my wrist is super neutral, so it's strong. So what you'll see a lot is people do this, right? They have this hyperextension, they're holding the rack like this. Really bad for your wrist for obvious reasons, right? 35 pounds now bearing down on my lower wrist. But also it's going to have dangerous effects on your elbow and on your shoulder. Alright, so make sure you get that nice solid lockout on the wrist, or as we like to call it, you have no wrist in kettlebells. And at first you might feel a little pressure on the outside of your forearm. right? Some people are like, oh, it's a little sore there. So you can start with a little bit of a wristband if you want, if you're just getting used to it. But eventually, you won't feel it at all. I mean, I've been using kettlebells for a while, and I never feel the weight now on the outside. It just kind of has to get used to it. So another thing, once you're in the rack position, to look out for is your hand alignment. So I always say that I want to be able to pick my boogers. So I know it's kind of funny, but it's something my clients always remember, all right? So if I can pick my boogers, I know that my arm is in its proper alignment, okay? It's in a nice, strong position. If I'm out here in no man's land, I'm leaving my shoulder very vulnerable, okay? So if I do any twisting, you know, people, oh, I got rotator cuff injuries. So all the time I see this in the gym. People doing something wacky like that on their shoulder. You never want to do that, okay? So keep it nice and tight in the rack position. And if you have a larger chest because of muscular development, or you just, you know, heavy in the front, some females, you can also lift the elbow up, okay, to alleviate for some of that room. But you never want to move this hand out of the positions, right? So you don't want to come out here and do anything like that, but you can raise up the elbow. And so the kettlebell, once in rack, is sitting somewhere in between your forearm and your bicep, right? It's nice and secure. So now it's part of my center of gravity. It's part of me, okay? That's the safety position, that's rack. So on the clean, the biggest errors that you'll see is that people do not tame the arc, okay? So from the side it's better to see. This is an incorrect clean. Okay? So I did it with a fairly light kettlebell because I didn't want to injure myself, but some obvious things you saw happening. The smacking of my forearm, the banging of my shoulder, the dropping of my hip, okay? I was kind of letting the weight just plop and hit me. That's something you never want to do. So from the front, again, incorrect, something like this. Just like letting the weight take advantage of me. But rather what I want to do is that I want to connect, hike back, and then corkscrew my hand so that the kettlebell does not swing back, but rather just turns and sits into the cradle or into the rack. All right, so check out my wrist action. I start with an internal rotation on my thumb, and then somewhere around my belly button, I start twisting my hand so that when I come to shoulder height, it kind of just sits in there. All right, so check it out. Check out the rotation on my hand, okay? Something else you might see me do is I loosen my grip when I get to the top. So I'm not gripping it too hard. If you choke it, it's gonna smack you, right? So this is me choking it and it plopping down because I was holding on too hard. But rather, I'm just gonna let it glide. Sometimes I'll even keep my hand open the whole way through. All right? And another common error is, again, the dropping of the hip. So when you come to the top of the clean, you wanna have that hard style lockout from your glutes, your abdomen, and grounding yourself into the floor, all right? So similar to a kettlebell swing. When you come here, you lock out your whole body, and now you are controlling the weight, and the weight is not controlling you. Again, a couple more reps, hard style lockout. The weight is not jerking me back or making me flop down, okay? Nice and hard. So that's the kettlebell swing. It's going to get you into the rack position. It's going to be your transitional movement. If you have any more questions, just give me some comments.